Hello and welcome to the webinar. This is 8 ways you're overspending on Salesforce. We're going to give everyone just another minute here to log in, and we'll begin the presentation shortly. Thank you for your patience. Hello and thank you again. This is the Miro Consulting webinar on 8 ways you're overspending on Salesforce. Thank you for joining us. We're going to begin the presentation now. All right, just so you know who we are, know who you're getting this information from. We are Miro Consulting. We've been in business for 20 years. We were the original software licensing consulting agency, and we're the leading global provider of that to this day. And we provide services for Oracle, Microsoft, IBM, Amazon Web Services, and Salesforce. We specialize, like I said, in license management, audit advisory, negotiation tactics, support management, and cloud services. And our mission is basically to help our clients maximize ROI on their software licenses subscription investments. We help you stay in compliance. We help you successfully negotiate contracts and audit settlements. And the great thing about working with us, and this is unique to us, the only ones in the industry, is that we have a performance guarantee. And that is that the amount of your cost savings that we uncover will be more than our fees. And nobody else in the industry does that. So keep that in mind when you are talking to us. And real quick, you might ask, how did we even get into the Salesforce business? It's very simple. We've been doing this for 20 years. And for many years, our clients started asking us, could you help us with Salesforce? For a long time, we didn't think we could. We took a look into it, and it turns out, yes, we actually can. So we've been doing this for quite a few years now, and we'd love to help you with your Salesforce too. But let's talk about why you're here. What are we going to talk about in this session? Well, we're going to talk about active users who actually aren't active at all. We're going to talk about unassigned user licenses, unassigned feature licenses, underactive users, over-licensed users, non-user usage fees, adoption and rollout failures, and renewal mistakes. And all these are very closely related, and you'll see as we go. So the first question I sort of asked myself when I set out to do this sort of presentation and give this sort of information out is, what the heck is an active user anyway? And excuse me, slide back. The way that this came about was because we had clients coming to us and they were kind of confused, and they say, I have this, I thought I had this many active users, and now I just bought a whole bunch of licenses I don't need. So let me explain how that kind of thing happens. And this is a common scenario we run across. It tends to be a miscommunication between the different teams, legal, IT, procurement, marketing, sales. And the question comes across as, how many active users do we have? And the problem with that is people have different sort of definitions on what they think an active user is. So let's say procurement asks their IT department, because if they're looking to, Salesforce is recommending an increase from 1,000 to 1,500. Procurement asks IT, how many active users do we have? IT confirms there are 950 active users. So then procurement says, oh, well, my God, we're using almost all of our licenses. Yeah, I guess we should buy more since we only have 50 licenses unassigned. In reality, 400 of those active licenses are assigned to users who rarely, if ever, log in at all. And they don't do much when they do log in. And this is a very common scenario. And it led us to sort of ask the question of, what does active mean? What does an active user? And I looked everywhere. I might have missed it, but I spent quite a long time looking, and I could find no official definition of an active user as far as Salesforce is concerned. So I had to take a step back and say, well, what can an active user do? So it really comes down to this. An active is just a checkbox on a user's profile. It's in setup if you don't know what that is. Active users can log in, and they can have new things assigned to them. Now, you don't have to be active to own something. So if you have a rep who left the organization, but you want to keep a record that they were the one who closed a certain opportunity, that's completely normal. But you can't assign things to people who are not active. They can only retain ownership from when they were active, right? That is almost it. That is basically it. So what does an active user not mean? Well, this user may have never, you can have an active user who's never created, edited, or even viewed any record whatsoever. They might not have logged in for years. they may have never logged into your organization. They may have been working for somebody else for half a decade now. They could still be in your system as an active user. And if you're wondering, could they still log in? Not in all scenarios. Your admin could freeze them, which wouldn't allow them to log in, but they would still remain active. All right, so why would I have active users? Now, why would I have active users who aren't really active? And if you're wondering, we're going to get into it much deeper than unused licenses. You don't need me to tell you that unused licenses are as waste. Obviously, that is very low level stuff, but it gets deeper than that. But let's start here. So why would I have an active users who aren't really active? Well, you probably have too many licenses. And there was no need for your IT department, your sales, your marketing, whoever administers it. They didn't need to unassign licenses, so they didn't. You may have, you may have purchased one, but nobody's using it at the moment, right? So you have these user licenses who are just floating in the air, not assigned to anybody. And these are pretty much the most common way we find that organizations are wasting money in Salesforce, simply they were over aggressive in how fast they thought they were going to roll it out, or how many users were actually going to log in and use the system, things like that. There's half a slide behind. So now the problem is, you might sit there and think to yourself, well, if I've got 50% of my licenses not being used and my renewals coming up, my rep's not going to suggest that I buy more licenses if I'm not even using half the ones I have. No, your rep will. Your rep absolutely will, in all circumstances, recommend you should get new licenses and get more licenses. That's because your Salesforce rep believes in you more than anybody else. He thinks your business is going to do great. You're going to expand like crazy. Everything's going to be roses. So you really should buy more licenses and get that big discount, don't you know? So you purchased more than you needed, but also you may have needed all those. We talked to clients who have been in the unfortunate situation. A lot of it was during COVID, where all of a sudden they lost half their workforce. So they called up Salesforce and said, hey, we don't really need half these licenses anymore. It's a pandemic. It's a national emergency. Can we do anything? And Salesforce would say, no, you can't do anything. You bought the licenses. You owe the full term on the licenses. Doesn't matter to us whether you're using them or not. And there could be much, much more mundane reasons you have too many licenses. So one of my favorite examples was an organization who had a great team put together. They negotiated a great renewal. They bought a whole bunch of extra licenses. They got a great deal on them. And then the procurement rep took a look at their costs 6 months later and said, how the heck is our cost so much more than our contract said it was going to be? Well, when they looked into it, nobody told the guy provisioning licenses did not buy any more licenses. So a low-level IT guy who was not part of the negotiation, who didn't even know the renewal was happening, he was the point person for get this person on Salesforce. Well, part of his process was from the previous term when they didn't have enough licenses. So every time he was told to put somebody in and get a new user on the system, part of his process is he would go buy more licenses. And procurement people in the world always ask me, wait a minute. I just negotiated a contract with Salesforce. How could a low-level IT guy purchase more licenses that I didn't authorize? Well, there's something called checkout. Checkout is an automated way that Salesforce made so that you can go in, if you have the right permission, you can go in, you can buy another license. Salesforce doesn't care if that's an extra one, you didn't need it at all. You can buy basically anything in checkout if you haven't turned that off, or if you haven't limited it to just your executive IT administrators. So keep in mind, if you're from procurement or legal, or even marketing and sales, it is possible for people to buy more licenses with very little authorization whatsoever. And if nobody's looking at the bill coming in, you may not see them for quite some time. And guess what? Once you bought them, you bought them. There's no giving them back. There's no going talking to Salesforce saying, oh, my guy made a mistake. We don't really need this. Not going to work. So let's talk about some of the numbers here. So I always like to put a lot of data in my presentations and not just words, because the data is what matters. The numbers is what's going to get you at the end of the day. The cost is what's getting you. So let's talk about the hidden cost of unused licenses. And what this really comes down to is, let's talk about the difference between your discount and your utilization. So they're directly tied together. And what I mean by that is your discount is only as good as your utilization. So let's take a look at two companies side by side here who picked different options. So we're going to go with a license price of $200 per user. That doesn't correspond to any particular Salesforce license. I need help with the math from my team. I'm a marketing guy, so I rely on my team to do this. So just for make the math easy, these are $200 licenses. So company A got sweet talked into buying a lot of licenses. So both companies figured, we're going to need somewhere between 500 and 1,000 licenses. So which way do you go? Do you go conservative or do you go big? So company A, they decided to go big. They said, okay, let's get 1,000 licenses. We definitely think we need up 500 to 1,000. It's just to get off 1,000 now, and we'll lock in this great 50% discount. I mean, look at that, 50% discount. That's great, right? So they paid a total of $100,000, but at the end of the day, they only use 500 of those licenses. So in the reality, their real license, their utilization price was the full cost. Their discount was meaningless because they didn't use half the licenses they bought. So their discount after utilization, zero. Now let's look at company B. Company B did it on the conservative side. They said, yeah, we also need somewhere between 500 and 1,000 licenses. But company B said, we're only going to buy 500 for now. So Salesforce came back and said, oh, well, we can't give you as good as a discount as if you bought 1,000 right now. We'll give you this big 50% discount. But, you're only buying 500 licenses. So we can only give you a 25% discount. And right there, most people would just kind of have an instinct to say, oh, the 1,000 licenses seems like the better deal. But then let's keep going with the math. So they purchase 500 licenses here on company B. They pay a total of $75,000. They use all of them because it was a conservative estimate. Well, what's their real price per license after taking into account utilization? It's $150 compared to company A's $200. So what's company B's discount after utilization? They got their full discount, 25%, where company A got nothing. And it actually gets worse. Once you figure into the extra costs that are added on based on how many licenses you have for very common products that a lot of us have. So for example, what about if you also picked up support and Shield, right? So that's premium support, right? That costs extra, and Shield, which also costs extra. It's a cybersecurity product if you have never heard of it before. Well, they're based on the total number of users, right? So all of a sudden, now you've got a difference of $35,000. That difference jumps a lot. And that's what I mean by this is the hidden cost of unused licenses that gets worse when you look into it. It's sometimes it won't seem so bad on the surface, but it can get a lot worse. And a lot of times it's because somebody went for that big juicy discount. So obviously, all of you know that non-users who, unused user licenses are a problem. But let's talk about other kinds of problem users that are also costing you money you don't need to spend. So what do we call an underactive user? So you can be an active user, you can be, have that checkbox active, but that user's literally never logged in once, not one time. They could be an active user. They logged in once to confirm their email to set a password, and that was 7 years ago. Still an active user. They could be, like I said, they've last logged in years ago. They can log in occasionally. We had a customer who was very proud to say their employees logged in at least once every 3 months. Well, in fact, that was how often they had to log in to change their password because that was the password reset policy. So beware of, that kind of situation. It might be a user who logs in occasionally to look at a report. And, if it's like an executive person, that could be completely reasonable, but it's usually not going to be. It's usually going to be somebody who's supposed to be using the system, but really doesn't. You can have people who never create or put any information in. Or another one I like is this is a very typical salesperson thing, they will put the opportunity into the system. And then about 5 minutes later, they'll say, hey, I think I got an opportunity with this client. And then 5 minutes later, they close it for one because they only put in opportunities that they close win. So if your sales team's only putting things in at the very last minute, you're not really getting a lot of value out of your CRM. So there's an opposite type of user, the over-licensed user. So what does this user typically look like? Well, they almost always have a standard license. That's a license type if you're not used to it. If you've never heard of a standard license, you probably have a standard license. That used to be the only kind of license many years ago, and it's since exploded into many different types. So what does a standard user license have? It has full access. Well, maybe that user you have doesn't need full access. Maybe they only need to access a few custom apps. Maybe they only need to access accounts. They might be a developer for your team who really doesn't need to access any of that stuff and just needs to get into the back end to do development. And often we find users who have way too many features assigned to them that, the person who bought the features, who got the features said, oh, we have enough for everybody. Let's give it to everybody. Well, maybe you paid extra for all those licenses and you really didn't need them. But now you've got a bunch of users with them and you think you need them because those users have them. Now, another type of license, feature licenses. So a feature license entitles access to an additional feature of Salesforce that doesn't typically come with either that level of Salesforce account or that level of license. So what am I talking about? Well, the most common examples are marketing user, flow user, knowledge user, service cloud user. You get these, you pretty much get more of these than you're ever going to need. It's very common to have these types of licenses unassigned. Flow user is is more of an IT administrator type thing. It is an automation thing. So of course, you're not going to hand that out to your average front level sales user. The way I bring it up though is just because you have way more of these than you actually need doesn't mean ignore them completely. You may find that you've got users who could use these things and they just haven't been assigned to them because somebody looked at it and said, I don't know what that is, or that's worthless. So if you might have a lot of unassigned feature license, it's a lot of value going to waste. And if you want to know, you can check your company information inside your Salesforce, and you will see a list of all these types of licenses that are unassigned. And like I said, it's normal. Don't freak out. Some of them are completely common, but others you may have you should assign to get the value because you are paying for them. So what's not a user license? What's not a feature license? An add-on license. So an add-on license is extra stuff, extra functionality that Salesforce calls an add-on as opposed to a feature for whatever reason. Usually because it's more of a self-contained set of abilities or set of functionality, as opposed to a feature license tends to be like one thing. So some of them include CPQ, which is something price quote, the C escapes me at the moment. Service location, Einstein, lightning dialer. There are like 80 pages of them. You can get it from the Salesforce add-on pricing. Google that, it'll take you right there. And it will be, I'm sorry, it's 60 some pages now. They must have taken it down a few pages. So that is where you can look up what do all these add-on pricing look like. And one of the things I will quickly mention when you look at add-on pricing, the people who price add-on pricing for you generally don't care about your discount. So maybe you negotiated a 50% discount, and that's great. Don't expect that to carry over to your add-on licenses. Typically, they are not discounted much at all. I don't want to say that's blanket for everyone, everywhere, everything, but don't expect your user license discount to carry over to your add-on licenses. And again, you can check your information. You can check your Salesforce company information page inside your Salesforce. It will tell you. So how did you get here? How do you have all these extra licenses that you're not using or that are being underused, et cetera? Well, it typically comes from a lack of effective planning and rollout implementation of your Salesforce instance, or of a new feature, or of a new cloud, like a partner cloud, something like that. And typically what happens is companies overestimate how quickly they're going to get it done, and they underestimate the challenges. So rollout is one of the most common. Organization thinks, hey, I'm going to roll this out to 500 users over the course of the next year. 12 months later goes by, they've got 200 users migrated, and they say, what the hell happened? Well, a lot of times it comes down to training. A lot of times it comes down to the functionality didn't get developed in time. And you can't train somebody on functionality that hasn't been finished developed. So it's kind of becomes a cascade of delays. And you can end up a year later and go, man, how did we get here? Well, there's ways to get around that. You can buy a certain amount of licenses, but only tell Salesforce, hey, I'll take the first 250 in year one, and then I'll take the full 500 in year two. You can do options like that, but it's best to do it smartly, because Salesforce knows that as the deal gets more complicated, you're going to have more difficulty tracking whether you're going to get a good deal. But generally, they're open to things like that. And one of the biggest problems we have, and we've seen, is we bought Salesforce, and then all of our executives got fired, and our new executives don't want anything to do with it. Can we hand it back? Can we get a refund? No, you cannot get a refund. So keep that in mind, that getting buy-in from stakeholders is very important. We talked to more than one organization, quite a few, where you get everybody in the room together, and sales thinks that marketing owns Salesforce, and marketing thinks procurement owns it, and they all think that IT is the one who's there, owns it from the technical side, and IT says, this is shadow IT, this is not part of my system. It happens. Salesforce tends to fall between the cracks. So it's something to be aware of when you are looking at, when you're planning something new, or even with what you have now. So when do these mistakes tend to happen? Well, they happen at renewal. So a lot of organizations have mature Salesforce instances. They are, as some are buying new, but more people are going to be renewing than buying at any given time. Well, the most common, by far, the most common mistake is you wait too long. We've had clients who have come to, or prospects, I should say, who've come to us and say, yep, I'm going to play real hardball with Salesforce in 2 weeks and tell them they don't give me my pricing. I'm going to walk. And we have to say, sir, your renewal automatically renewed 2 weeks ago. It's already a done deal. You're going to have to wait till next year. Nothing much you can do about that. So keep in mind, Salesforce will auto renew on you if you do nothing. That's standard language. So they wait too long, but normally that just means they didn't get a chance to see, hey, am I actually using this Salesforce? How many licenses am I really using? How many features? What should I really be buying here? That kind of thing. And then, of course, there's the uplift. Salesforce just announced across the board 8% new cost, 8% new uplift on all products. And that's really not the most unfair thing. They hadn't had an uplift in something like 8 or 9 years now. So while you may have gotten uplifts, of course, at your renewal, that's completely common as they nudge you up from your initial pricing. There wasn't across the board 8%. So just keep that in mind. If Salesforce comes to you with that, it's not personal. Like I said, mistake is not measuring actual growth. Another big mistake is overestimating your future growth. You know, how fast you're going to grow your company, how fast you're just going to start using Salesforce more. And, you know, if I had to, do an estimate on the clients I talk to, I'd say, you've got 3 out of 5 that will overestimate their growth, 1 that hits it on the nose, and 1 that underestimates. And if you wonder which one of those is the better condition to be in besides hitting it on the nose, you'd rather go under, because you can always buy more, but you can't give it back. So another mistake is not having a migration plan. You should have a plan B, even if it's unrealistic, even if it's the most work in the world. It's certainly not going to be as expensive. I can tell you that. Salesforce is typically the most expensive option. It may be once you incorporate consultants, you might need to do it, but you should have a plan B. You should be ready in case Salesforce comes to you with an absolutely terrible offer that you want nothing to do with. Because it's happened. We've had clients who they were completely shocked and they had to bite the bullet because they hadn't done anything. They had no plan B whatsoever. Another thing you want to do is bluff Salesforce, because they're not going to buy it. You got to remember, the Salesforce team that is selling to you, the business team, et cetera, they're the best in the world. Literally, they're the best salespeople in the world. They have the most data on sales. They do this all day, every day, and you do this once every 3 years. So don't walk into a meeting with a rep and say, yeah, we're leaving. We're going to, pack up everything and go. If this, because that rep's going to look right at your account and go, well, you seem to be actively developing this system and actively using it. And I see no indication that you're going to do shit. So don't bluff Salesforce. They're going to know. Another big problem is missing terms and conditions. And what I mean by that is not things you could have had but you didn't get. I mean things you already got and then didn't get included in your renewal, because that's something we see all the time. And it's nothing nefarious. It's just a Salesforce rep kind of shoveling something out the door, trying to make his numbers, didn't read your old contract thoroughly, missed a couple of clauses that you should get and you would have gotten in your renewal, but your frontline rep missed it. And if you miss it too, it's gone. Just because you had it before and you sign a contract and say, hey, wait, you didn't include my terms? Too bad. Wait till next time. The MSA changes. Salesforce is great in that they put their master service agreement up online and they have everyone they've ever had. A lot of organizations don't do that, but Salesforce does. So one of the things we always say is, look at what the master service agreement is now. Look at what it was when you signed it. If it was different, look for changes. Those changes might affect you. They may be huge for you. They may be nothing. Knowing if you have leverage or not. So if you are a shop that barely uses it at all and could walk out the door tomorrow, make sure you tell your sales rep that, because he'll know. He'll be able to verify that, hey, this organization, they didn't do much at all. They never really rolled it out. It's a glorified Rolodex. They can walk. So you don't tell your Salesforce rep that you know that. They're just going to assume you don't. Another big problem that we see people run into is they buy the wrong product. The most common example of this, as I can give you, is people who buy Community Cloud versus people who buy Partner Cloud, and they should have bought the other one. And it's as common one way as the other. And that's something to look out for. So take a hard look when you're looking at which Salesforce product to buy, because there's quite a few of them these days, and make sure you're buying the one that actually fits your need and maybe not an adjacent product that sounds like it, but not really. Don't get rushed. Another big thing, don't get rushed into an early renewal because a lot of times they will. If Salesforce thinks you're getting your act together and you're starting to really, take a deep dive into this renewal, they're going to come knocking on your door early. They're going to offer you a great sweetheart deal, or at least maybe it looks like a great sweetheart deal. So be prepared and don't all of a sudden get rushed either because they came at you early or because you were late in preparing. And finally, the biggest mistake, not having a software asset management policy. And what I mean by that is a good software asset management policy has someone calling Salesforce and say, hi, I'm Sean. I am the only person you should be talking to for my business. I want you to send all of your inquiries to me. Do not talk to anyone else at my organization. I am your point person. Because if you don't do that, Salesforce will call everyone. They will call people who work for you trying to get information. They will call your boss. They'll call your boss's boss. They'll call the executive at the company. They'll have a high-level person at Salesforce reach out and get that comfortable relationship and assure your CEO that this is really the best deal he can get, and signing it will be a big win. So you should really have that kind of policy so that information you don't want going to Salesforce isn't going to them, because they're going to try to get it. Do it on time. We're going to have questions at the end. If you have any questions, make sure you put them in your question box, and we'll try to answer them as best possible. So like I said, what are my key takeaways here? Number one, start planning 12 months early. It's a good rule of thumb. Doesn't matter if you are signing up for a 1-year contract or you're signing for a 5 plus extra, whatever it is, start early, earlier than you think, because time flies when you're doing this. Like I said, have a software asset management policy, understand your actual uses, know what you're paying for. A lot of people, especially people who have unlimited edition Salesforce, they've got a ton of things and they couldn't even tell you what they are. And what I mean by that is you're already paying for it. Go look. Yeah, you might actually have a lot of value you can find there, and you might also be able to turn around at renewal time and say, hey, I don't actually want this anymore. Let's start, line iteming everything that I can to, save some money. Have a plan B just in case Salesforce makes you an offer you can't refuse. And most importantly, consult with people who've done this a lot. Consult with people who, don't, like I said earlier, Salesforce does this all day, every day with the biggest players in the world. You do it once every 3 years. So get some help. Get some people who've been through it, who know what Salesforce will accept, who know how to tell you, hey, you're getting a good price or not. And the last thing that I've just added recently that's very important, that's going to trip you up if you don't know, is Salesforce just renamed virtually everything. And I mean, I don't want to say it's everything, but it certainly seems like everything. So I would say more than 50% of all Salesforce products have new names this year. They've moved. They used to be part of this group. They're now part of this group. There's another new group that 5 of these things got assigned to. For example, Salesforce renamed Pardot to be account engagement. The problem with that is they already had 3 other products that had the exact same name. I'm waiting for them to figure that out. I don't know if they're either going to combine those products or not. They don't certainly seem not to be. But keep in mind, Salesforce products have new names. Don't get tripped up. We have a licensing guide that can help explain to you. I'm going to send it to all of you after this event. So you can see what a lot of those new names are. I don't think I got them all because, it's Salesforce. There's a million different products, but we got a lot of the major ones we can help you understand. So those are my key takeaways from my presentation. If you want to get the questions in 1 second, but if you want to contact us, there is our information online. So let me see if my Q&A here, I have none at the moment, but I had a couple that got sent to me during the registration process. So I will answer those now. So one of the questions we got was, we got an offer from a company who says they can switch seats for us and basically hot swap in so we can have one user license and essentially keep switching it to different users and effectively, call the license something like ex-secretary admin. And, I got 3 different humans who can all log in using that. So don't buy that. Don't do that. That's against Salesforce's policies. They will audit you for that. And if you think, hey, Salesforce audits, they're not a thing. No, they really are, especially if you have something called a limited use license, which is not limited by technology. You just aren't supposed to use it in certain ways. That, for example, is something that can get you in trouble with the Salesforce audit. Another one I have seen before, and I've had this question is, hey, instead of paying for the full thing, I'm just going to get Partner Cloud and then use it like it's Service Cloud. Again, that's not going to work for you. It seems like it might be a good idea. On the surface, it has some of the same features. You might be able to get away with it. You won't. Effectively, you'll get locked out of all the features you actually need because they make sure of it, because Salesforce knows that trick. So that is another one to avoid. And like I said, there are many other ways you can save money on Salesforce. Those are just the primary examples. I have another question. Let's see here. Can licenses be switched between instances, same user? No. An instance is a license is locked into the instance that it was purchased under. Now, you can't quite do what you're asking, but there are things called swaps. So if you have swap rights, then you can effectively, like I said earlier, with an organization that said, oh crap, we bought Partner Cloud and we really should have bought Community Cloud. You can do swaps like that. So that's a more common swap where it wouldn't be just one user, basically all your users would be going over. But in general, no, you cannot have, in fact, you can't even have the same email address in more than one Salesforce instance. So if I have my email address in my Salesforce instance, if you try to put my email address as a user in your instance, it would reject it. I got another question, and we're going to get back to you on that one. That depends on your personal situation. I don't want to say the user's name, but the person who just asked the question, and that happens a lot. A lot of times we get questions like, "What kind of uplift should I expect at my next renewal?" And that could be everything from 0 to full list price. And what I mean by that is you can commit what I'll call certain Salesforce sins. You will break their rules without realizing it. And by getting rid of a product you weren't supposed to get rid of, and that'll take away your full discount. So you got to be careful in doing things like that. I think we're out of time. I'm a minute over. If I haven't gotten to your question, please, we'll get to you right afterward. Again, if you would like to contact us to help you with your Salesforce, we don't charge anything just to talk, and we can help you understand if you're getting a good discount. This was the Salesforce licensing webinar from Miro Consulting. Thank you very much for attending, and have a great day.